Good evening, everyone. Sorry to keep you waiting. We're reconvening the Brattleboro Selectboard Meeting of Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. We know that the meeting was properly warned because Patrick told us so at 5:15. The first order of business is to approve the minutes of January 25th and of February 1st. Would our clerk like to make a motion?
Sure. I move to approve the minutes of January 25th, 2022 and February 1st, 2022.
Right. Is there any discussion? Select board members in favor of this approval, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you all very much. I just have a few remarks because it's a big weekend coming up. We have the Winter Carnival and all next week, and it's the 66th annual Winter Carnival. And there's a special website of events, and that's www.brattleboro-wintercarnival.org. There is also the Harris Hill Ski Jump this weekend. And the Outing Club is having fireworks at Harris Hill on Friday night. And there's also hot chocolate. There's also the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center is having the Artful Ice Shanties at the Retreat Farm. And yours truly is participating. Mm-hmm. So, Yoshi, do you have any town manager remarks?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Any select board members have remarks? Yes, Tim.
Say something. I'll echo something that our fire department alerted us to. Hey, everyone, please do not skate on the Connecticut River, or actually any river would be a good idea. We've had really up and down temperatures, and if you fall through in a river, you can be sucked down and taken onto the ice and you can't get back up. It's super dangerous, even though it looks solid. And you, more importantly, or just as importantly, you could endanger a first responder who's trying to save you under that ice. So just a very timely something that they posted, and I reposted, and really think it's a great idea. Please stay off swift moving water that's under our ice.
Thank you, Tim.
I got one.
Yes.
This is our last regular meeting before town meeting day, or town meeting elections. So March 1st at the American Legion, 7 to 7, come vote. And I think there are, if you requested a absentee ballot, you can drop them off at the municipal center in the back parking lot. There's a drop box that's checked multiple times a day by town staff. So I'll be helping out, so I'll see you there.
Great, thank you. Patrick, are there members of the public who wish to participate at this time? This is the time for public participation where items that are not on tonight's agenda can be brought up. One person.
There is one person named Zoom user.
Roll the dice. Yeah, that's guess we'll see how that goes.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Summer Price. Sorry, not allowing me to change my name at this moment. But yeah, I had a proposal. I was hoping that we could take the housing emergency and the BCS emergency rental proposal seriously. And I'm in particularly really caught up in looking at a tiny house community that was started in Springfield, Missouri. It's called Eden Village, and the coordinator of that program is named Nate, and I got an appointment with him tomorrow at 12:30 Eastern time. But I also spoke with the sustainability coordinator today, as well as tried to reach out to Josh. And I want to support the Planning Commission, but in particular, I'd love to find somebody that would go on that call with me tomorrow to speak to the tiny house village people because they covered every aspect of what it would be like to create a housing community for the homeless, a permanent one, from just every aspect of it. And they also have a conference coming up on March 24th and 25th. And I'd like to propose that we send somebody from the Planning Commission to that conference. It does cost $300. And I am looking for anyone that's interested in tiny house community for the homeless. I know we're looking at other paths. I'm well aware of the Dallin Chalet project, the 55 house emergency 54 house. Or, my daughter works for Groundworks, so she tells me stuff. But I want the $300 for somebody from the Planning Commission to go to that conference, which is March 24th and 25th of 2022. And I'm hoping for somebody to actually to be on the conference call with me tomorrow, if anyone's interested or has any ideas of somebody that from the Planning Commission or on this board to speak with me. They made 54 houses on 4.5 acres. They made 31 houses on 4.5 acres, and then they made an additional 54 houses, 400 square feet, tiny house community that has a documentary, and I will put it in the chat because people from all over the country are just swarming them, trying to follow their example. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel because we're already doing so much here with the Planning Commission. But this is something worth looking at. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Summer. If people want to get in touch with you about this, how would they do that?
She's muted.
She's mute. You're muted.
Well, for one, I'm asking that we raise the funds, or I don't really know much about the process, but the $300 for somebody to go to that conference on March 24th and 25th from the Planning Commission, as well as
Summer.
Stephen.
I'm asking that if listeners are interested and want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Well, usually I'm able to put something in the chat. I'm new to
We
these
don't do
meetings.
that. We don't do chat at select board meetings.
Should I give my phone number?
It's up to you. I would perhaps,
With my phone
yeah,
number.
I wouldn't be comfortable with that either. What about an email, Summer?
I'm comfortable with either, but
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you contact the town manager's secretary tomorrow morning and give her your contact information so that if anyone who's interested can call the town manager's office tomorrow and they will convey that information to you.
Okay, and additionally, my email is Able Body Wellness, all
I
one
thought you
word.
didn't want to give your email.
I'm sorry, you're not hearing me correctly. I said I was comfortable with either, but
Oh, okay.
I will call the town meeting manager, but my email is ablebodywellness@gmail.com, all one word, Able Body Wellness. Like I had a massage practice, so that's what it was called, @gmail.com. And I
Okay.
would type it up, but I don't see a place to type it.
No, thank you very much, Summer.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else, Patrick?
Yes, Kurt Dodge.
Good evening, Kurt.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
Thank
Kurt.
you. Hi, I think that's a great idea that Ms. Price suggested. I hope we can do that. I heard about it on the internet too. I want to say a couple of things relevant to RTM. The youth vote amendment that was just approved on Wednesday by the Senate has the provision of allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to serve at RTM. It's not just for lowering the voting age. It's also for allowing younger people to serve in government. And this was approved in 2019 in a very, very emphatic vote. It had been delayed by a mix-up in the select board for more than a year, and then it was delayed a couple of years in the Senate and in the State House. So it's been a little bit of a disappointment that I think the select boards have not recognized their duty in this matter. Of course, each individual can have an opinion, but after that vote, it became the duty of the select board to advocate for the vote of the people that made an overwhelming choice for this legislation. And I understand that no one on previous select boards has made any effort to lobby for it. As I say, it's not your opinion that matters now. It's not an opinion anymore. It's the policy of Brattleboro, and the select board should go ahead and advocate. You should write today, draft a resolution and write a letter to the governor. There was a editorial in the paper today from Mr. Isaac France, who had seen the opinion of Mr. Malucci, who is an aide to the governor. And Mr. Malucci says that the governor is not inclined to sign it. Well, I have spoken with the governor. Another person from Brattleboro Common Sense went to speak to the governor, and he gave us plenty of time. We spoke with him for half an hour, and we thought, wow, he's really very congenial. And he assured us that he would support this legislation. So I'm hoping even now that there is some misunderstanding between him and Mr. Malucci. In any case, the select board should step in and advocate. And
Kurt, I understand you have many things tonight, so let's pick up the pace. That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I think that you could go ahead and draft a letter or something. That I think is your duty, because it's not a matter of opinion at this point.
All right.
Thank you very much, everyone.
We will take that under consideration. Thank you. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, we are on to new business. The finance report. Yoshi, you'd like Patrick to speak to that?
Yes.
All right, Patrick, please.
Sure. As the board can see from the board packet, there's a nice memo presented by accountant Kim Ellison in the finance department. We are presently at 59.6% of the way through the year. And after you account for certain front-ended expenses, we're at about 55.4% of budget, so a little bit ahead of where we expect it to be. The parking fund is similarly at 55.2%, and the utility fund, I believe, the utility fund is at 55.2%, and the parking budget is 51.7%. So each of the three major funds are a little bit ahead of schedule in terms of where we expected to be in terms of our expenses. And if there are any questions on the financial statements that are in the report, I'd be happy to try and answer those.
Does the select board have questions about the finance department's monthly report? Tim?
No, I saw Daniel's hand.
Tim's perusing. Well, whilst Tim is perusing, I will lay up a nice little softball question for Patrick.
Yes.
Hey, Patrick, when is the next sales tax installment going to be announced? Typically.
Well,
Yeah, we should have it for next select board.
we should have it for the next select board meeting.
All right then.
There you go.
That'll be news.
Oh, is it me? Well, the only thing that caught my eyes is, and maybe it's been in here all along and I've just never noticed it. There's a line in here. It says intergovernmental something. Intergovernmental is what it's called. And then it says total intergovernmental.
Page number?
Has that, oh, sorry, page 3 of 16. Has that always been there?
Page 3.
Is that the
In
county?
the revenue or in the expenses?
Oh,
It's
sorry,
zero.
it's,
Total intergovernmental is right here?
Yeah.
That's revenue.
Yeah. it must be revenue.
Yeah, that's revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
You wish there was revenue on that.
Yeah, I want intergovernmental.
You'll notice the detail on intergovernmental is 0 and the total is 0.
Correct. I was
So
just wondering if it's a new placeholder or I've just never seen it before.
I think depending upon how you calibrate the reporting specifically to generate this, you might, somebody might have missed, don't include lines with 0.
Uh-huh.
And so I've seen it before, but I haven't always seen it. It's just not something really in use.
I just thought maybe it was something that was an upcoming way to keep the books, or perhaps it's been there before and I never noticed. Just trying to learn. It's a newbie question.
Always.
Just kidding.
I have a motion if the chair would.
Oh, that'd be great.
I move to accept the monthly financial report as presented.
Great. Ian has moved to accept the monthly finance report as presented. All select board members in favor?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Small amount of discussion.
Yeah.
I don't recall prior to this being on the consent agenda that we ever had motions to accept the report in the past. I thought it was always just information.
That is my recollection as well. I noticed it was presented this way at the last meeting as well,
Yeah.
a month ago. And I, not having a particularly strong opinion about it, thought, well, all right, we can do it that way too.
I don't
It's
care.
interesting
I just
because
wanted to point it
If
out.
it was in the consent agenda and we voted on it,
Yeah.
we essentially did the same thing.
Yes. I just wanted to raise it as
You're
something that
absolutely
I,
correct. I don't
yeah.
think, you remember, or maybe last time.
Let's see what our in-house counsel said.
All right, well.
I
Do we
think,
have
were you
to
referring to
agenda?
Ian or to Bob?
As far as putting the financial report on it?
No.
No.
No, do we have to make a motion to approve a monthly financial
To
report?
accept it.
To accept
To
it.
accept it. You can discuss it, but if you're going to have it, you might as well have a motion to accept it each month. And that way, you know where you're coming
Right,
along.
that's sound legal
Julie knows.
advice. We might as
All right,
well.
I'm reading something else.
Yeah. Now we
So
can.
you guys just not been accepting it.
Okay. Can we?
So my motion
consider them?
stands.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
great. I'll just repeat that the motion on the table is to accept the monthly financial report as presented. All select board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
I,
Aye. 5-0, thank you. All right. Rule requiring face coverings in indoor public spaces. As required by the rule, the board will consider whether to extend, modify, or repeal the resolution. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this? Jessica?
Sure. I'm just going to lay out some facts and the CDC recommendations and where we're at with numbers right now.
Great.
The latest recommendation from the CDC is to have folks wear appropriate face coverings indoors when cases are at a certain rate. So they're recommending by case rate, 50 per 100,000 is the threshold. We're at 132 per 100,000. So we're over that. We're qualified to continue wearing masks. Another bit of information that for me is an important one in guiding this decision is the capacity of the hospital beds. And so the US Department of Health puts out a report on all the hospitals in the region and what their current capacity of inpatient beds is. So BMH right now is around 79% capacity. Early on in the pandemic, when we didn't have so many cases, they were between 30 and 60%. So to me, that's another sign that we should stick with this. And those are the numbers that I'm using to make this decision. The last one is, right now, we're at a 7-day case average of 7 cases. There were 20 cases yesterday, but our 7-day average is about 7 cases.
20 cases in Wyndham County?
In the county, yes.
Okay.
Back in June, when we lifted the mask mandate and folks were vaccinated, our 7-day case average was 1. So those are the 3 numbers that are guiding my decision tonight to vote to keep it.
Okay. Yes, Ian.
Yeah, first off, great primer. That's
Yeah.
what a way to get into this. So I was maybe hoping to sort of save the board some time here and propose something. So I think I am also in favor of maintaining the mask mandate for the moment. But I also think that the board should take an action to reflect the dropping case numbers, as I think everyone is aware. So I propose that we maintain the mask mandate this meeting, but that we discuss it at every regular meeting moving forward. So this would give us an opportunity to, the moment the numbers change and are below wherever we feel comfortable, then we could rescind the mandate and be accurately reflecting the numbers. So yeah, that's what I'd like to do.
I would just like to mention that the town is having an upcoming indoor public meeting, which is, as Ian likes to refer to, Election Day. And I want to make sure that we don't do any action to change the status quo of the mask mandate until at least after Election Day.
Which happens to be the very same day of our next meeting.
Our next meeting.
Yeah, our next meeting is on Election Day,
That is
as it
correct.
always is in the first meeting.
It doesn't make that much sense.
So, yeah, sorry, I just totally jumped in. My bad.
Okay, so is there any more talk?
Well, I do have to point out that I'm not sure that's a new idea, Ian, to address it every single time, because that's literally what the rule says we're going to do.
Yeah, it's just, but we have not been exercising
Correct.
that. Yes, I recognize that though.
But I do appreciate that acknowledgement. I continue to be opposed to a mask rule, mandate, order, for the reasons that I've stated before, and I won't bore everybody. Just as a reminder, we don't order folks to wash their hands, and we don't have a rule about covering your mouth. And both of those things are things that we're all should be doing at all times during winter months when we have to face the flu and now an approaching endemic COVID, whatever your argument is there. My other point is, later in the agenda tonight, we're probably on a 5-0 vote. We'll be agreeing that doing an ordinance without proper enforcement is a silly thing. That's my prediction for our later discussion. I continue to think that a rule with 0 enforcement is not only pointless, but is something which I heard a nationally recognized doctor refer to as performative hygiene. So we all know now that Omicron is extremely contagious, and the way masks are being used and utilized. I can tell you, being the father of a 4-year-old who now is refusing to put it over his nose. So I'm now the father of an anti-masker. It's a very ironic situation to be in. But so it's really fairly ridiculous to have a rule where states all around us are dropping. I think we did get some feedback as a board from a prominent business owner today who says that people are just walking in without masks because they come from places without mask requirements. And they politely usually put it on. I still continue to have a lot of faith in people doing the right thing So what I would like to do is sort of in the same theme of Ian, is propose that we set a date certain to drop our mask rule in Brattleboro. And I think that date certain should be March 2nd, because that will get us through the election, massing for the election. Hopefully there'll be a lot of people participating over at the American Legion. So I'd like to propose that we go ahead and do it that way, because then people who are wondering if we're going to actually make a decision in the face of, precipitously dropping caseloads, which I've said all along is much less important than hospitalizations and ICUs, especially with Omicron. I think we should just go ahead and set a date certain, and then on March 1st, if we change our minds, we can do it then.
I prefer Ian's. Do we need to vote on whether Tim's motion is supported?
I didn't make a
motion. We're just
it's a proposal.
Yeah.
Getting a lot of
Yeah,
shaking heads,
I would
so-
really rather not pick a date now and then backtrack. I would rather say, we'll take it up on March 1st. And depending on the situation at the time, we'll either say, let's keep it going or let's get rid of it. And it sounds like there's plenty of desire on the board for investigating the possibility of getting rid of it on that date. But I don't want to project the future, because that's sure as heck hasn't been working out for us the last couple of years.
Okay.
If I can just,
Go ahead.
I actually do like an element of it, Tim. I think giving people time to know like when it's going to happen is nice. But I think at the end of the day, it's better to wait and actually be working with the most up-to-date numbers the moment we make the decision, even though it means that it's like one day mask mandate, next day not. And that's kind of an unfortunate element of this. So I still prefer my suggestion.
Okay, so if we want to go with the potential motion that Ian suggested, and I must say I am very appreciative of Jess's statistics, we need to change the motion.
Yeah. Do
So,
we have any public comment?
Patrick, is there any public comment?
This time.
Okay. Ian, do you want to modify and move?
What's that?
Just change 30 to 14.
I think I'd rather.
Do we need to change?
I mean, right, because can't we just say 30 days and then take it up again on next time? And if we rescind it at that time, then it's rescinded as of whatever date.
Yeah, I think I would prefer the language every regularly noticed meeting. Is that all right?
What's wrong with me?
I think we were. Never
You can
mind.
just leave it.
Yeah.
No, 30
we'll take it
days.
up.
30 days is further. Yeah. Oh, but we could just.
Well,
take
we're
it
going
out.
to take it. It's you guys set the agenda,
Oh,
and it's going to be on the agenda for March
all right,
1st.
so we're overthinking it.
Yeah,
We're- yeah,
don't
okay.
overthink it.
All right,
All right, you want to make the motion then, Daniel?
Sure. I move to extend the rule requiring face coverings for 30 days.
okay. Daniel has moved to extend the rule recovering face coverings for 30 days, requiring face coverings for 30 days. All select board members in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye. Okay, that's, are there any people who are not in favor?
No.
Okay, that's 4-1 decision. Thank you very much. All right, the next item is Red Clover Commons 2 grant, the closeout of public hearing. Patrick, am I correct that you and Sue Fillion will be discussing this?
It would just be me.
Okay.
If that's all right. So there are 2 times in the life of a CDBG funded project that the board is asked to hold a public hearing. Initially at the application stage, and then today at what is the closeout. So Red Clover Commons 2 was designed to construct an 18-unit low-income housing development for elderly persons in the parking lot of what has been Red Clover Commons, which is a 55-unit project of similar design. As you'll recall, Brattleboro Housing Authority took on the development of these projects in the wake of Tropical Storm Irene, after recognizing that housing really shouldn't continue to exist in the floodway in West Brattleboro. They have been aggressively developing new housing options. And with Red Clover Commons 2, the last of the folks living in harm's way in West Brattleboro is being relocated to Red Clover Commons 2. And with this as sufficient motivation, the select board endorsed a grant application in March of 2019 for $350,000 for what was a $6 million project. It's a very competitive program. Instead of $350,000, the project was awarded $300,000, at which time the select board generously decided to fund the remainder of the request from the town's revolving loan fund, making the $350,000 whole and allowing the housing authority to be able to move forward on schedule. The project is now built and complete and open and occupied. And all the folks who had previously been living in Melrose Terrace in West Brattleboro have been relocated. And the project in the end cost $6.1 million, and it's up and running with the support of the town and with the help from the state and federal government.
Great. So if we are asked to conduct a closeout public hearing, was that it?
Yes.
Very good.
We might see if there's any comments from the public or if there are any comments or questions from the board.
Very good. Let's start with the public. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak about the Red Clover Commons 2 grant?
Not at this time.
All right, select board members, yes?
Yeah, Patrick, were these units considered when the housing study was conducted?
I'm sure that-
Honestly, Ian, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I could imagine
They would.
that senior housing is a component of the housing study.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else?
No.
All right. Well, then, I think that the closeout public hearing has been accomplished. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
BHA COVID grant closeout public hearing.
So similar situation, the board is asked to conduct a closeout public hearing for what is the BHA COVID grant. And in essence, what this is in the immediate aftermath of the COVID pandemic emergency, some funding came from the federal government to the state, and the state made it available as quickly as they could, utilizing existing streams of funding. So they took advantage of the structure that is the Community Development Block Grant Program, and they began accepting applications for eligible nonprofits to reimburse them for additional COVID-related expenditures. This was early on when FEMA was on the ground for COVID and reimbursement, and a bunch of different programs were being stood up to assist with the additional expense coming from COVID. After some back and forth between the Housing Authority and the Vermont Community Development Program, they settled on the sum of $28,237 for expenses related to hazard pay that the Housing Authority had been making available, particularly to its maintenance staff, because they were, going into people's homes and providing additional cleaning. And so this was a program that frankly was it was a little bit of a solution that was hard to apply, in part because any of the subrecipients like the Housing Authority had to be able to demonstrate to the federal government that the recipients were income eligible. And the Housing Authority is in perfect position to be able to do that. They could say, here's a household income for everybody we've served. And so that particular constraint was not in any way a challenge for them. And as such, they were able to make use of the funds relatively quickly and easily.
Thank you, Patrick. Are there members of the public who would like to speak about the public hearing for the COVID grant for the Brattleboro Housing Authority?
There is someone named Eve.
Okay, Eve, welcome.
It's actually, my name is Summer Price, and I can't fix that on the computer. That's my somebody else that lives here. But I just wondered how far it went because I live on Valley Road in the Tri Park. And I raised my hand for the earlier question about the public relocating Melrose. I'm familiar with that. How far are we taking that? Are we going to have to relocate people in the Tri Park?
Actually, Summer, no, I think it's a little confused. The Red Clover Common is a housing development that moved people out of Brattleboro Housing Authority property along what's the name of that street? Melrose, because it was in the floodway. Tri Park is a completely separate private housing development that is not subject to either one of these motions at all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, are there select board members who wish to comment on this COVID grant public hearing? All right, Patrick, thank you very much. I would consider this matter closed.
Thank you.
All right. Board of Civil Authority election appointments. Does Hillary want to speak on this matter, Patrick?
She does.
Great. Hi, Hillary.
Good evening. Can you all hear
What do
me?
we have here?
Yes.
Okay. So there is a statute, 17 VSA 2143, that states if the Board of Civil Authority does not contain at least 3 members of each major political party, the party committee can request in writing to the clerk to appoint 3 members of their party to the Board of Civil Authority. Those members would have the ability to vote on election matters only. So they would not be involved in apportionment discussions or appeal discussions or abatement discussions. It's elections only. And it says that the legislative body, being you all as the select board, shall appoint 3 members. And so if there were 1 member on the Board of Civil Authority, then you would appoint 2 members. Currently, there are no members of the Republican Party on the Board of Civil Authority. And so the Republican committee has nominated 3 people to be appointed as BCA members for election-related matters only. Those are Richard Kenyon, Richard Morton, and Aaron Smith. So I leave this to you to make those appointments, and happy to answer any questions. And Mr. Morton is in the meeting as well if you have any questions for him. He is the chair of the Town Republican Committee.
Thank you very much, Hillary.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions from the select board about what we shall and must do?
Well, Elizabeth, no, I have a curiosity really, because none of us on this board have a party affiliation that is declared when we're running for office. And so I was kind of curious, like the Board of Civil Authority, I mean, like we're also members of the Board of Civil Authority. And how
You know what?
are people's,
I can answer that.
can I finish it?
Yeah.
How are people's political affiliations kind of known in that body?
Because they run as justices of the peace.
I see.
And
to be a
justices of the peace have a political designation. And it just so happens that the people who were successful in the previous election for justice of the peace were of the other party,
The other party?
the Democratic.
The Democratic Party. Understood. Okay. Curiosity answered. Thank you so much.
Anyone else wish to discuss this matter?
Unless you want to go into the history more, no.
I just have two questions. For
Yes.
you. Hillary, so just two questions for you. One, if so for the Board of Civil Authority, there will be sort of two separate email lists and things like that, like the individuals who are only going to be part of the BCA when it comes to election matters are not entitled to information that the BCA deals with that is not involving elections. Is that correct?
That's correct. In the sense that they won't be included on the email list for pre-hearing materials or things like that. Our meetings are always open to the public, and so they're always welcome to join the meetings. They just won't have a vote.
And then my only other question is, if are these people also running?
Running for what?
JP.
I don't know yet. That process doesn't happen until April to August. So nominations from the parties haven't been made yet. So we'll know in a few months.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, are we ready to vote? Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure.
Jessica?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Richard Kenyon, Richard Morton, and Aaron Smith to the Board of Civil Authority for election purposes only.
Thank you, Jessica. Jessica's made a motion to appoint Richard Kenyon, Richard Morton, and Aaron Smith to the Board of Civil Authority for election purposes only. All select board members in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
It has passed 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Hillary.
Good night.
Welcome to the BCA.
Sort of
the three of you. The election portion.
The election portion of the BCA.
All right, our next item is downtown sidewalk snow removal. Yoshi, would you like to tell us about this?
Yes, this is a discussion of the proposed ordinance amendment. This comes from several select board members came to staff and asked what can be done about the snow removal and ice removal in the downtown section of Brattleboro. When we did a review of the ordinance to see how the process is done, it was under staff's suggestion when we looked at it that there was no real enforcement mechanism for us to, other than asking the downtown businesses to remove the snow and ice. So therefore, to change that, we wanted to propose there is having a fee or fine instead of having what the current ordinance states that if you have non-compliance, the town could then do the work and then send a bill and then collect on that bill later. So there is an existing structure on enforcement, but it is very cumbersome and difficult for the town. And it's my understanding, I think we talked about this, the only time this has been used was when you said the Rite Aid. So maybe
The last time I recall it being enforced was when the Rite Aid was at where is now the River Garden. So that probably dates me.
it's been quite some time since this, the town has ever,
It was when Rite Aid went out of business and nobody, it had closed down and that whole section in front of what is now the River Garden didn't get shoveled. And to my recollection, that was the last time that we enforced it. But the change here would change it to a fine as compared to the town doing the work and then sending a bill. So it's just.
Let's back up a little bit and explain what happens now versus what will happen.
So what happens now under the ordinance is it is the duty of the owners of the various buildings along the various streets, Main Street, Elliott Street, High Street, there's a list of those. When it snows, to remove the snow along the sidewalks in front of their properties.
within 48 hours.
Within 48 hours, thank you, Yoshi. And for the most part, merchants and owners do that. And I mean, that's essentially what happens. And when somebody doesn't do it, there are usually complaints. That a couple meetings ago, you had somebody during public participation comment on the sidewalks. Many times that'll either go to Dan Tyler at Public Works, there's reach out, or to the town manager's office. Sometimes people need to be reminded, but it does say 48 hours. So that's actually a much longer time frame than people are used to. I think when it snows, you get right out there and shovel. But that's what happens currently.
So they have to do it themselves, and if they don't, what happens?
If they don't, then the person complaining can call Public Works. Public Works will send somebody over to do the snow removal, and then the town has the right under the existing ordinance to send a bill to the owner for that time to recoup the money for the work done.
But you say that doesn't happen.
To my knowledge, that has not happened in a long time. I have not spoken with Public Works to verify that for this winter, but it at least has not been something where it has risen to the level of any legal enforcement for quite a long time.
And so the change is that the town will notify?
Well, the town would issue fines. So if somebody does not do it, you can be issued a ticket, and there would be a waiver fee that you can pay, just like any other town ordinance, to pay it. If you don't, then you go to the Judicial Bureau, and depending on the facts, but then the fine can be the maximum. I don't have it right in front of me, but I want to say it was 200 and 100.
Correct.
So if you pay the waiver fine, or waiver fee, it's $100. If you don't and go to the Judicial Bureau, it's $200 fine.
And who shovels the snow?
In that situation, no. Essentially, there is the provision that if there are repeat offenses, the town can take action to force that. But in the meantime, somebody's going to have to remove that snow. Whether the town would step in and do that or a neighboring property owner, that remains to be seen. The idea here is to have a little bit more of a stick to make sure that the property owners do that. Because it'll get expensive for them. It's more expensive to pay that waiver fee than it is to hire somebody to shovel what usually is, 50, 75 feet in front of a building.
Okay, should we hear from the public before we hear from ourselves, or what do you want? Are there members of the public, Patrick, who would wish to speak?
We might want to frame it a little, or no?
Do you have suggestions for framing?
I have a couple quick questions and
All right.
then a suggestion.
Okay.
Because I like that this is before us. I think we're getting at a problem. And that's actually my first question. Is this I haven't really picked up that this is more of a problem now, or is this something that has been increasing over the years? What's everyone's sense? And we are, just for clarity, we're talking about the DID only on these streets?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can anyone answer that?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay.
I can only answer it from my experience.
Please do.
I'm not omnipotent or omnipresent,
Oh.
I guess.
Really?
No.
Really?
Yeah. There are our downtown is small. It is a couple of blocks, right? Our downtown thrives on pedestrians being able to move around it safely. We have an aging population. There are many instances that I have personally witnessed where even just a couple of inches of uncleared snow near a crosswalk or uncleared snow that's left to become ice has impeded the safe passage of people who may be elderly, may be disabled. I have both of those kinds of people dear to me in my life. I've helped elderly people get over little banks of snow to get into the crosswalk to cross the road on like Main Street and High Street, which if that's not the center of Brattleboro's downtown, I don't know what is, you know. So in my personal experience, I have seen many people struggle. I've also seen vast disparities. So outside some businesses, after a snowstorm, you wouldn't even know it, right? It is clear as a bell. And then next door, it's been left, and, you know, you leave that snow for too long and it's hard to work with, right? So what I would really like to see as a kind of standard downtown is that after a snowstorm, everybody does their absolute best to clear it for the benefit of the whole of our downtown district. It is no good having one business be absolutely perfect and next door being abysmal, because the person has to get from point A to point B. They don't just land.
Now, what's the time frame of this ordinance? Before that was 48 hours. Is that still?
It still is 48 hours.
Still 48 hours. Okay. Tim, do you have another concern?
Please. One gets to that very point. I think 48 hours is ridiculous.
Yes, me too.
I think 12 is too short, 24, frankly. So 24 feels better to me. But my suggestion would be that if we convert an ordinance that basically says, if you don't do this, the town will do it and hand you a bill, into an ordinance with just fine-based, that still doesn't get the sidewalk cleared, right? So I think it really, if anything, should be both.
Yeah.
So we get the sidewalk cleared after 24 hours. If it isn't cleared, we get it done. Public Works gets it done for us. Thank you very much. They get handed a bill and a fine, or perhaps a fine after a repeat offense. But that's a more reasonable thing, I think, which actually moves us towards both a solution and enticement. If we're convinced we want to use a stick, that's the other issue with this, is I really want to think about it. Do we need to go leap right to the carrot, right to the stick, or do we want the carrot situation? Right.
Let's hear from Daniel.
Yeah, I thank you, Tim, for that. I mean, you know, I don't necessarily feel like we have to go to the stick right away, but we also have a small number of tools to work with as to what the town can actually impact, right? And changing ordinances is one of them. I do agree that 24 hours is a much better number than 48. I would actually like to hear from Dan Tyler from Public Works about the town's capacity to clear additional snow when, following a snowstorm, they're already out clearing snow off the roads, they're manning sidewalk plows, you know. So I don't know if we can bring Dan in on that.
Sure.
Probably the understanding it might not happen. It wouldn't have to happen immediately after the 24 hours.
Right. If the purpose is to clear the snow, right? That's the purpose.
Yeah, I think there should be a mechanism by, just a second, just like the two sticks are combined, like you get a fine, but you also have the ability to repair it yourself before the town does it. You know, it's like, because you could get a fine and a bill.
Yeah, you do that once though. And
Anyway. Hi, Dan. Do you have any commentary to make on this measure?
Daniel, could you just repeat your question, please? I'm a little unclear about what capacity you're asking.
Yeah, so Tim was imagining this situation where Public Works will come and clear this snow outside a building that hasn't been cleared by the owner. And I'm thinking that that's happening at the same time that you're dealing with the snowstorm more generally. And so I just wondered what sort of capacity you'd have and how quickly that could get done in theory. I mean, it's a little theoretical.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think right now the practice is if we get a complaint, we try to reach out and try to get the business owner to clear it themselves. And, you know, as you mentioned, if we're out clearing a storm, we're pretty busy. And if we were to do it, it would be as things slow down after the storm. You know, we do have a crew this year. We have a contractor that is clearing the crosswalks during and immediately after a storm within the length of Main Street from Wells Fountain down to Malfunction Junction. in the past, we've struggled to find someone to do that. We do have a contractor on board this year. Maybe we could leverage them a little bit if need be. We haven't had to this point.
Are you saying, Dan, that you haven't had any complaints that needed town remedy?
We've received complaints. We've been able to reach out, and they've been taken care of. The DPW has not removed any snow.
So is there a problem, or is the system that we have in place now working? That's my question.
I mean, there is a problem.
Yeah.
I don't want to name buildings,
Yeah.
but if you want to make me do that.
No. I'm just seeing and hearing a disconnect from
Yeah.
what you
Yeah,
kindly told us and what, how it gets to DPW.
right. I wonder if residents are so irritated by it that it's like an inconvenience to people, but are they calling Public Works to say, hey, this is an inconvenience?
It might
Right.
also be a speed issue.
Yeah. Do they call your office, Yoshi?
So what we do is we get through the select board has come up with us complaints as well as directly to us. And also I believe that was distributed Stephanie from the DBA has done a survey to ask all the
Right.
business owners themselves, is this a problem? And I think majority of them are saying that they do believe that there can be improvement. So I think they have acknowledged too, right, that they are saying that they are also seeing the same thing. And I think that that's part of what this is coming from, is it's sort of saying, how can we look at it better and have this conversation, which I think is what is happening here.
Yeah.
Is that I think everyone just, let's look at how we can ultimately
Right.
make this a better thing.
The survey was kind of all over the place, though. It also said, the town should do it, or blah, blah, there were a range of, but did you have a question or a comment?
Yes,
Ian?
Yeah, I just had a question for Dan, and then I wanted just to speak to, maybe just to also add on to Daniel, like my commute, I walk to work every day and I walk all of Main Street from Frost to actually up to Putney Road. So I've never called the town to complain about. So it's actually interesting too, speaking to the timing, the 48-hour, 24-hour question. So like I hit it in the morning at like 8 a.m., hopefully before 8 a.m. Tom Costello's watching. I'm there at 7:45. I'm probably in the office 10 minutes early. And then I hit it, when I'm leaving the office pretty late, later than 5, probably 6, 7 o'clock. And it's different. Like some owners have actually cleared in the meantime between. So
And some have not.
and some haven't. Yeah, and there is the same ice build that's been building all day. So I think it actually, there is a real issue here. And then I guess my question to Dan is, so you kind of answered it, but so we do have town crews on like in the downtown right now, or contractors who are clearing the crosswalks. Do we have town crews clearing any other part of the downtown area that isn't covered by basically owners who are responsible for clearing their own spaces?
So yeah, the crosswalk areas that they clear are, they basically, our trucks go by and leave a windrow of snow in front of the crosswalk. So they're basically removing that from the edge of the road to what is the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And our sidewalk tractors, there are a few areas where their routes do overlap the downtown district. The town has properties, within that district that we plow in front of, and then, traveling from those properties to other points on the route, they don't pick their plow up and drive to the next spot. They plow the sidewalk continuously. So there's a little bit of overlap on Elliott Street, Flat Street, and High Street, I believe.
Okay. Thank you very much. Interesting.
Okay, so. Yes,
I was just pointing because there's a few people who want to speak.
are there?
Yes.
Please.
Okay. The first person is Fire Tablet.
I think that's Dick.
That's definitely Debbie Gray.
Hey,
Hey, Dick.
Hello?
how's everybody?
Doing all right?
Well, I guess this is a good reminder to the town. Maybe they should start reviewing every ordinance that we have, since this one is pretty draconian when you think of 48 hours after a storm. I did talk with Yoshi briefly this morning and voiced my concern also about the poor condition of the Harmony lot being plowed the last 2 years, which is deplorable. And I hope something is done about the contractor who does that. Going back to this ordinance, I believe 12 hours is sufficient. And I'm going to guess that 98% of the building owners, you keep talking about storefronts, but it's the building owner who would get the fine, not the storefront. And even if the building owner has an agreement with the storefront that you're responsible for shoveling the sidewalk, you're not giving the fine to the storefront, you're giving it to the building owner, and then he would be dealing with his tenant about keeping the walk cleared, because he just had to pay $100 or $200 fine. I also believe that the fine, if we can't get there and shovel, should be escalating. If it's not shoveled in the 12 or 24 hours that you're talking about and goes on for another day, the fine should escalate. And one of the other things that you have here is enforcement. Now, when we have people paying parking tickets, we actually end up putting a boot on their car if they don't pay their tickets. What is the plan for enforcement if you send if a building owner gets a fine for not clearing his walkway? You're going to send him a bill. What happens if he doesn't pay it? What's the next move from there?
Thank you, Bob.
With respect to the fine, the conversations that we've had at the town manager's office is to actually delegate that to the parking enforcement folks, because they have the authority to issue town tickets, and they're also walking that beat, so to speak. So with regard to the fines, that would be it. It would also then be if somebody is not complying, and if you do wish to have us amend to put back in the section about the town doing the work and sending the bill, they can note that, then communicate that to, I'm not volunteering Dan at Public Works, or whether it's Public Works or the town manager's office, whoever's going to be sending out that bill, that could be done. But the first folks viewing that would be the parking enforcement officers.
And does the parking enforcement officer know the building owner, who the building owner is?
Well, I think that point, it would be the address, and it would be our responsibility from the manager's office to then figure out what that got to.
So again, you have not answered my question. We have at least the basis. You're putting this on the parking enforcement to issue the ticket, and hopefully they would take a picture of the property so there was evidence of the infraction. But what happens on the collection of the ticket? You said if you send me a bill, because I'm a building owner, what I can just look at that thing, and if there's no penalty, what do I have to pay it for? So thinking this through, I if I don't pay my tax bill on time or my water bill on time, there's a percentage penalty that gets added for every month that I'm late. And at the end of the year, if I don't pay, I go to tax sale. What are you going to do to collect any fee, any fine that you impose on a building owner?
Good point.
Yeah.
We'll have to consider that.
Yeah, and the short answer with regard to if there's the ticket part of it, that would be enforced through the Judicial Bureau. And there is a process of going to the Judicial Bureau to collect on those fines. And if somebody doesn't show up, then there are consequences with regard to that. if your direction is that you also want to add back in the part about sending a bill, if they don't do that, the town can go through small claims court against the property owner to collect that bill. So you'd get a judgment. If they don't pay the judgment, then theoretically you can attach the building and go from there.
But also you could add to the ordinance something like, if you don't pay it in such and such a time, then God knows what happens, right?
Right, well, either way, we would have court enforcement of it if it got to the point where you had people who were really not complying with the ordinance.
In the old ordinance, you did have a section that says in the event that said property shall not reimburse the town for such expense within a reasonable time of receiving notice thereof, the recovery may, together with all legal costs and actions of contract brought upon the section. So
Is that remaining?
that would be if you put that back in. So that would alleviate the concerns that you would have.
Great. Ian, you had a comment?
Yeah, so I like the idea of keeping the town in so that we could commence a collection action. And would we get like the statutory interest rate, and would they have to pay our attorney's fees if we actually had to take it to that level? I'm asking. I don't know if that's
correct. We decided what Yoshi just read.
Yeah.
We would keep, the idea was to take that out, but I'm hearing that, at least if I with your direction, we'll put that back in for the second reading and the hearing, which would be the next meeting that you have on this.
okay. No, I think that's.
There's still members of the public, am I correct?
Yeah.
Are we finished with Mr. DeGray?
Please.
Well, I guess my last comment would be, is this much ado about nothing? And one of the comments that certainly as I served for 8 years, when anytime we talked about ordinance, was the lack of enforcement of the ordinances that we have. And so, we're wasting valuable oxygen here. And I don't believe that this is a huge problem. And so I guess looking at this from my point of view, things can freeze in 24 hours. So I would hope that you would change this to at least 12 hours, because there are people that come down after a storm on the street, and 24 hours is an awful long time. And as you know, we've had some awful cold weather up in Brattleboro after snowstorms, and things have frozen up. So I would hope you would reconsider thinking about 12 hours. And if there's, like Tim was talking about, the fact that I strongly support the fine. I really do. And the number is arbitrary. Whatever number you pick, I'm going to support. But if the town also has to go and shovel, that they also be charged, that be in the ordinance, that we charge for our labor, whatever is our time and labor and materials. And again, whatever attorney's fees that we incur moving forward, that all needs to be part of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Who's next, Patrick?
Next up would be Elizabeth.
Elizabeth?
Hello there. I would like you to yield at this point to Stephanie, as I am a business owner on Main Street. So I'd like to let Stephanie have a say first, please.
Hi, Stephanie.
Stephanie was next.
Hello. Thank you. And thanks, Elizabeth. I look forward to hearing what you say, though, as well. Thanks. I'm wondering if we could just back up a little bit and have the conversation a little bit in reference to what Dick just said, is this much ado about nothing? And I'm curious of if we take a pause and look at what the problem we're trying to address, is that problem, which I believe is looking at whether or not we have proper and safe snow removal in the downtown district. And the reason why I'm kind of keying in on what Dick said is that I don't think it's just the here and there property owners that don't remove it within 48 hours. I think the larger question is, because of the ad hoc nature and the kind of the willy-nilly nature of many different people removing snow at all different levels of expertise of moving snow, that overall our downtown doesn't have the best removal and keeping our sidewalks safe. And so my question would be to go even further back and ask who should be responsible for the removal of snow, and why are the DID property owners in a different situation than all the other property owners outside of the DID?
All right. Who wants to answer that one?
I can answer that in part, and I'm looking at Dan maybe to correct me if I'm wrong in certain parts of my answer. Some towns across the state will remove all of the snow in a downtown area, and that's part of what they charge in taxes, and whether they do it with their own town crews or they hire it out with contractors, some towns elect to do that. In Brattleboro, it is my assumption that we cannot do that in the area that is subject to this ordinance, because in large part, the sidewalk plow and sander in many instances, not all, but in many, cannot fit between the parking meter and the building. And so it's got to be done by hand. There are some sections along Main Street where it's nice and wide. The snow plow or the sidewalk plow could do that, but also the ability of, if a town were to come in and just remove it, some towns don't have meters and they come in and put the blade of the grader out and sweep it all or plow it all into the road and then pick it up that way. But I think part of the answer there is the meters are a physical obstacle to that occurring. And Dan, if I'm wrong on that, then correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are places where the meters certainly are an obstacle. There's a lot of different building configurations with steps and whatnot. Quite honestly, the sidewalk equipment that we have now, I don't think would be the right equipment for the job. I'm not familiar with how other towns do their downtown areas, but I think really a shovel probably does the best job. If we were to go up through there with the plow, we wouldn't be able to get close to the buildings. I think it would be borderline unsafe with pedestrians on the road, on the sidewalks. There's a lot more downtown pedestrian activity during a snowstorm than there is on the other sidewalks that we plow. I think we'd have to take a good hard look at what the best way to remove that snow in the downtown area would be if we were going to consider removing it ourselves.
There's also the idea that the DBA could collectively remove, have a contract to remove all of the snow from all of the people in the association. Have you considered that, Stephanie?
She muted. Yeah.
She wants to be muted.
No. So, I don't, is it our responsibility? I think my question is still the same, and that's the discussion that I think is juicy, is the one we're having right now, is whose responsibility is it? Is it your downtown's organization responsible for contracting out, snow removal when the rest of the town does? I did send you all the information that I found as a downtown organization. There's 23 downtown organizations around the state. So I asked the question to them of how their downtowns deal with snow removal. And I heard back from 11 of them, and all 11 that responded to me said, yes, their towns are responsible for removing the snow. The survey that Elizabeth referenced, I just asked 3 questions. And one of the first question was, are the current means of snow removal on the downtown sidewalks and intersections of the downtown effective? And 22.5% of the 40 responses said yes. 57.5% said no, they're not effective. And I think that gets at the issue that I started with, which is, I don't think the problem is just the one-offs that every now and then don't get cleared. It's the overall quality of the clearing, and especially around intersections. Whose responsibility is that? And then I think it's the curb cuts. It's the space right next to the sidewalk and the road. Who's responsible for that once it gets big? The second question that I asked is, do you feel like a town imposed fine would support more effective removal of snow? And 50% said yes. So that, and 17% said, I'm sorry, 50% said no, a fine wouldn't be effective, and 17% said yes, and 32% said possibly. And I have a feeling that gets at what Dick was bringing up, which is, it's the property owners that you're fining, not the businesses. And it's very convoluted who, each person has a different lease, each property owner treats it differently. And we go back to the overall quality is just hodgepodge.
Well, Stephanie, no, I am, of course, a social scientist, but I would say that if you asked a question, do you want to be fined? I'm surprised that only 50% said no. Let's have Daniel comment on that question.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, so Stephanie, you'd asked the question like, who should be responsible? And I feel like the correct question is, who is responsible today, this winter? And as far as I understand it, the answer to that question is the property owners, correct? So what I would like to get at, I don't actually feel so strongly that we have to have a fine. What I feel really strongly about, and I should hope that the DBA feels the same way, is that we have a safe, accessible, walkable downtown in the entirety of our downtown district, our designated downtown district, right? And so whether that happens in collaboration with the town, where you guys choose to take on higher assessments in exchange for services, or whether you contract with somebody yourself and you charge your members for that service, or whether you let the scofflaws pay their fines, I don't really care. What I want to see is clear sidewalks throughout the entirety of our downtown district.
And so what you're saying, Daniel, is right now, the property owners are responsible. If we may have this amendment, the property owners will remain. No one is suggesting that we change the responsible party. And I'm suggesting to you that there are options within your group to resolve this issue while still keeping the property owners as the responsible party. We don't care how you do it. It would still remain your responsibility, whether you want to do it collectively or individually. We don't care. Are there any more comments?
Could I respond to what you said?
Sure.
So I'm understanding what you're saying, and I'm asking for the conversation to continue about who's responsible, because I certainly don't have a public works department, in my organization. I don't mean that glibly either. That I still feel that it would be let's keep going on why is it that the property owners in the DID, and so far what we've heard is that the machinery isn't there. But is that the only reason?
No, I think it's always been, it's one of those things that it has been. And Daniel, did you have a comment?
No, I mean, I just feel like I could name for you the businesses in the district that do an excellent job, because there are some that after every snowstorm, it is totally clear. And then next door to those businesses, it is the exact opposite. And that inconsistency makes it hard for people to travel around downtown safely. And I just want to remove that inconsistency. I want the downtown organization to talk to all of their members and make this happen. I really don't feel like we should have to have a fine. You know, I don't necessarily feel like the fine will solve the worst offenders, but like, if a business is going to operate downtown, it needs people to be able to walk to it safely. I don't see what's so confusing about this.
Let me just ask this. Are you aware of all the different hodgepodge ways that all the different property owners now do this work? How do they do it? They do it themselves? Do they hire people? What do they do?
You name it. So some of the property owners will get out there themselves. Some of the property owners will put it in the lease with the businesses that are renting from them and say the businesses are responsible. Some of them will hire out other people to do it. And it's the same as if you look around the neighborhood, your neighbor who shovels their walkway up to their front door, some people are good at it and some people aren't. And Daniel, I think you and I completely agree. It's absolutely essential that we have good snow removal in the downtown. And that's not what's happening when you have all different people responsible for the snow removal. If you have consistency and you have skilled people doing this snow removal, you're going to get a different response.
Well, Tim.
I was just going to say that I don't think, I agree with those statements. I just don't think that this board is in the mood to shift the cost burden onto the everyday taxpayer of Brattleboro, because this is a specific problem to the DID that we're discussing. And I'm not, for one, in the mood to tell the Brattleboro taxpayers that they are going to be paying more because the DID can't get their act together.
But the DID are property owners that already pay taxes in. So I'm confused.
But the problem we're discussing here is the downtown inconsistencies with safe walkways.
Right. And there's a reason why we're not discussing that elsewhere, because the town takes care of it. And so why is it that the town treats the DID differently? And yes, this ordinance has been around for a while. That doesn't mean that maybe this doesn't work, right? That's not a reason.
You know,
The town takes care of what?
I think that we're not going to change who the responsible party is.
Okay.
The means that we have to affect change, as Daniel described, is through punitive measures. You, in your organization, can take any manner of change you wish to make that system more efficient for your people. But what we can do on the municipal side is strive to change the ordinance to make it more of a priority that we have these safe sidewalks. So that's where we are. You know, we either will or won't change this ordinance.
Can I just,
Sure.
I think I just have a clarifying question, I think probably for Dan. So does the town clear sidewalks and other locations in the municipality or in the town that isn't in the downtown zone?
Yeah, we clear approximately 15 miles of sidewalk in town. There was a time where that was more, and then it was reduced down to 12 or 13, I think. And we were down to one sidewalk tractor. A second sidewalk tractor was added, and we've increased it to about 15. Those sidewalks are really focused around the schools. It's my understanding that that's, why the routes are what they are. They're the neighborhoods to and from the schools in town. Green Street, the Avenue, Oak Grove area, the main routes, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
The point being that the town does not clear all the sidewalks in
No.
town.
No.
We clear the sidewalks where there is common good amongst all taxpayers. And that, it does include, Dan, of course, walking to work, the heavily traveled walkway, one of which I live on.
Right.
It makes perfect sense for a sidewalk plow to be regularly employed there. Whereas side streets get less attention just because as a town, we haven't decided that we're going to clear every single sidewalk. We just haven't decided to dedicate those resources in that way as a community.
So Stephanie, why don't we hold your listening and hear from some other people?
We have Gary Stroud.
It was Elizabeth.
There was an
before,
Elizabeth.
Stephanie who ceded
Is
her
she still
time.
there?
She may
I
not.
believe we spoke to Elizabeth. Do we want to go back to her?
Well, she just introduced Stephanie but she
Okay.
does have some things to say.
Well, let's see if she's available.
And I'm a patient waiter.
Thank you, Gary. There she is. You're muted, Elizabeth.
Am I? It's tough to send those when, because the list changes
Unmute.
and you're about to click.
Oh, there she is.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, God Almighty, I take an awful picture.
Us too.
I have a store next to an area next door is unoccupied. So yes, of course, that property owner should be responsible. My lease includes the statement that I am responsible for snow removal. Luckily, I have a gentleman who is awesome, removes it in a timely fashion, ices, he salts it. And also I have asked him to please clear the snow that's collected along the curb so that my customers who park in front can safely get to my store.
Mhm.
So this leads me to the point that you're all freaking missing. You know, we clear our sidewalks and where do we put the snow? In the street along the curb. I followed your sidewalk snow removal, and where did he put the snow? On the curb in the street. So it's all well and good that you want the sidewalks cleaned. The safety issue is the pile of frozen snow along the curb. It's a huge safety issue. People park and try to traverse this frozen mound. I will admit, Dan, you're doing a great job, in my opinion, at the crosswalks. I park at the transportation center and walk down, and granted, there have been moments when I have had to walk in the street. I am not good on ice, not at all. So the issue is not the sidewalks, people. It's the snow that collects along the curb. Okay? I said my piece. Thank you.
So Dan, you need to get rid of the parking so that section of snow can be removed, correct?
So
Like you're-
yeah, everything gets plowed to the curb, you know, and the sidewalks get pushed to the curb. And, you know, generally if it's a storm, 5-6 inches or more, as soon as we finish plowing, we'll get out there and the following night and we remove the snow from the curb line. We typically remove South Main Street, Canal Street, Main Street, Flat Elliott, High, and Western Avenue. It's not every storm. You know, if we have smaller storms, we'll leave it and do it after a couple storms after it accumulates. We've removed snow just once this winter, I believe. But we try to be mindful of that pile and remove it. But it's also a big operation to remove it. I mean, it's 2 graders, it's a dozen trucks, loaders, everyone we have overnight. It gets costly, and we try to do it as needed, but not just to do it either.
Thank you, Dan. All right, are there other members of the public? Gary?
Oh, here we go. Okay, hang on. I'm booting up here. I should have my handsome face on in about a few once this works. Hi, all. How you doing?
There you are.
I guess a final Jeopardy answer solution. I remember in the spring before COVID when we had people out there doing the parking meters and paying them. Well, a while back, they had the same thing. I think either with the town or DPW, they had people shoveling those walkways, and they were getting paid for that. I worked with Jan Anderson with that. I transported some people to certain places to shovel certain areas, to work collaboratively with businesses and business owners. Perhaps maybe that's something that could be resurrected or implemented along with DPW and with groundworks. For people to get out there, get back into the workforce. There's plenty of snow, there's plenty of ice, so there's plenty of work. And working alongside with those businesses will build other structures and build other bridges with the people in the area. Downtown reminds me of my living room. I have to make sure it's clean when I have guests. And I think we have some coming this weekend, if I'm not mistaken, for the Harris Hill jump. So cleanliness is next to tidiness. I'm willing to work with anyone or any organization if they want to help out, to jump in, to deal with this solution. We're all in this together. We're a family. Like I tell my daughter, let's clean them dishes together. It's not me or you. We're in this all together as a whole family, and we're going to keep this town clean and pristine. So if any other questions people may have, and if they need my assistance, I'm going to be more than willing to help, to jump in and to give ideas as well also to get things going. So that way we'll all have a nice, clean living room. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Gary running for office.
I don't know. Patrick, are there more speakers?
Fire tablet, I think that's Dick DeGray, is got his hand up again.
All right. Dick, it's your second bite of the apple.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, it's because of a comment that you made that I'm lucky I don't have any hair, because I would have pulled the rest of it out. I strongly disagree that this is a DBA issue. You have a couple of property owners, which the board members who brought this up are afraid to name. And so we spent over an hour here talking about 2 property owners, I'm believing that I know who they are, that their names should be brought up. And you want to put this on DBA to solve this problem. This is a town ordinance. This isn't a DBA ordinance. DBA doesn't have any authority. And I'll be damned if I'm going to pay for snow plowing for people who don't want to take care of their own walk. I'm responsible for my building. And if I don't, you have that ordinance in front of you, and don't be afraid to find somebody, But going and saying that this is a DBA issue, you are so off the mark, and I'm so offended by it, and you should be ashamed of yourself. You bet your ass I'm fired up. I'm really disappointed that you're trying to pass this on to DBA. This is your responsibility. And as a taxpayer, I pay for that plowing on the outer streets that we don't get downtown. I pay for trash pickup that we don't get downtown. So we don't have a la carte tax bills. So don't put something on DBA. That's the town's responsibility to have an ordinance that's enforceable, and that should be the end of it. Forcing it back on me to pay more money in my assessment to pay for deadbeats that don't want to shovel their lot is way off the mark. And I hope all you select board members hear this.
Thank you, Dick. Is that the end of it?
Make a quick point of
Elizabeth is back.
clarification, maybe, just for
Sure,
fairness,
go ahead.
because I think Dick was pointing at you a little bit.
Yeah, he was.
I think you were reacting to the idea that it should now be the town's
Exactly.
responsibility.
Thank you very much,
And
Jim.
you were turning it back to DBA. I don't think Liz was intending to point a finger directly at DBA.
No,
Okay.
the DBA was talking about the various issues involved. And, you know, they are a group that is, their members are whom we're talking about. And I don't think any of us are in favor of changing the overall responsibility back to the municipality, as you
Just trying
mentioned.
to clarify that.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Elizabeth.
Thank you. Dick, you're a rock star. That's all I can say. You nailed it. The other thing is the fact that a select board member mentioned public safety. Isn't that the issue? Don't talk to me about extra cost of the DPW to clean up along the curbside. We're talking about public safety that's included in our taxes. Please go ahead and fine whoever you have to fine, but the DPW needs to clean up after we shovel out our walkways. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now, Dan Tyler discussed that there is a plan for that. So.
Not only a plan, it happens. I
Happens.
recall one of our more recent
Right,
meetings,
right,
we
get
saw
out,
them
yeah.
removing snow from the downtown after a storm at night using graders and snowplows,
Removing the snow.
you know,
All right.
and that is not free.
Right.
You know, that's labor.
So the question
machinery.
before us then is, are we ready to, well, actually, there's no,
This is a first
Yeah.
reading.
yeah,
So at best, you're going to give town staff direction as to what changes you would like to see for the second reading and hearing on this,
okay, so.
if any changes. But
so
that's the
we-
purpose of the first reading, is to put it out there, have the public be aware of this. It's actually the second reading where the official hearing takes place, though you've certainly heard a lot tonight, which is very informative for you then to give town staff direction on what changes you'd like to see, so we can bring it back to you.
Okay, so what I've heard the board members discuss is 24 rather than 48 hours. Are we all noddingly in favor?
And I think Dick's point about 12 is well taken. You know,
But it's hard to
12 hours
find
of-
people
yes.
at 12 hours.
Yeah, it's a little,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 12 hours would be ideal, but I can't see that we would be finding people to jump that fast.
Does it say end of storm? Like,
Yeah, it's a little tricky.
when does the clock start?
Right, exactly.
So 24 felt like more doable.
Yeah.
Certainly 48 is too.
And then do we want to add in that other paragraph that Yoshi mentioned?
We could add back what we took out.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have one
Yeah.
thought on, so reincorporating in the town clearance element under 14-5B. I mean, I'm looking at the crossed out section. So we have in the event that the property owner shall not reimburse the town for such
Mhm.
expenses. So the language is within a reasonable time after receiving notice thereof, the town may recover, blah, blah. So that's very vague. Now that we're taking a pass at this, would it be beneficial if we were to be more explicit as to when the town would take action in trying to recover?
And what do you have in mind? Do you have something in mind?
Well, I don't know. That's just something that stood out to
Alright.
me.
Well,
Maybe
then-
I'm kind of looking at Bob, do we want to keep it really vague intentionally so that we can choose whenever we want to? I guess reasonable time.
I mean, I think if you put in a time limit by which the town does it, you're actually hamstringing the town as far as enforcement if it doesn't act.
Yeah.
And the town is going to take your direction as to how, if the greater the problem, the more the town is going to be acting very quickly on these things. So what's a reasonable time? If you're going to give notice to a property owner that isn't pulling his or her own weight, You see if they get out there and remove it. If they don't, then we take the next step.
Yeah.
So I mean, you give us direction, but I think leaving it as a reasonable time gives flexibility to the town's enforcement.
Okay.
Okay, members, have we given Yoshi all the information that we think he needs to go forward?
So, okay.
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
all right. So let's take a break now. The interpreters need a break, and I'm sure the rest of us do as well. We'll come back at 10 minutes past 10. 8, whatever. Feels like midnight.
I'm gonna go watch a movie.
Thank you, everyone. We're reconvening. And the next item on our agenda is parking revenue losses. Yoshi, do you
Yeah,
want to?
So we can start, I can start with this and then
Yeah.
I'll give it to Patrick, but what we're looking at here is that ARPA funding has come to the town of the amount about 1.7 million out of the total amount of 3.4 million. And what the select board has mentioned in the past, and this is what I'm going with from speaking to Patrick, is that as funds are determined, we want to be able to look at what can be done right away. And I think everybody here and the select board and the town recognizes that the parking in town was detrimentally affected by the revenue was affected by COVID. So we wanted to look, when we're looking at ARPA funding, before we look at the bigger picture, at what is the most reasonable, easiest way that you can take that money right now. And we've determined about $555,000, $225 of lost revenue during that period of time. I looked, what was it? It was March 2020 through December of this year. So we don't have January's numbers. We could add that at a later time. And about $90,000 that was deferred from the general fund to the parking fund, correct. So those would both replenish both into the general fund, and then the rest would be going into the parking fund. And so that's what we're asking the select board to be able to review now and to consider. And if you have anything more to.
Patrick, is there something you'd like to add?
I agree completely with Town Manager Manali. I will only add that the last time we discussed this, we were operating under what was called the interim final guidance. The broad categories of use for the funds really hasn't changed. So there is still eligible uses for water and sewer infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, to provide premium pay for eligible employees, to support the public health and economic recovery, and lastly, to replenish public sector revenue. The one major difference now that the final rule has been issued rather than the interim final rule is that there is much broader flexibility provided to municipalities, particularly municipalities in Vermont, because what the U.S. Treasury has provided is a one-time $10 million, which was far in excess of our entire award, $10 million allowance such that you can use our entire award effectively for what they determine as government services. Government services can be anything from staff time, salaries, benefits. It can be road, laying out of roads, road maintenance, road intersection redesign. There's really anything that the government generally funds, it can now fund with ARPA funds, especially if you take the one-time $10 million allowance. So this affects virtually every municipality in Vermont, I believe, except Burlington. So there is really broad flexibility for the use of these funds. But to replenish lost revenue is certainly one of the most straightforward of expenses. And as we all know, the parking fund took a major hit for a number of years. It looks like things are rebounding now, which is fantastic. And there is, new activity downtown. So that's obviously a good thing. But staff has performed a calculation and we would ask the board to consider replenishing those lost revenue. And we would intend to come back with some broader recommendations for the use of ARPA funding, probably toward late spring, early summer.
All right. I just want to address that for a minute. And obviously it's a clear use of funds that we have long contemplated in replenishing the parking fund because it was clearly caused by COVID. But, you know, the bigger picture is that the select board has a multi-year responsibility to determine our funding actions under ARPA. And, you know, there may be infrastructure funding or, you know, what's going on from the federal government to the state, to the town. And we've heard from Congressman Welch and we've heard from Senator Ballin regarding the use of these funds. But we need to consider and plan this carefully, and we'll be doing that over the several months. So I just want to make the point that we're carving out this use now because it's appropriate to do so to get our parking fund whole. And that I think we should hold in abeyance any discussion about the larger use of ARPA funds until the appropriate time. So does anyone want to further discuss that matter?
That's great.
I just want to weigh in and re-emphasize the importance of, in the guidance, there's stress on the importance of transparency and the importance of community engaged process. And a lot of these things, to be able to do them well and do them right, some of the text in there says that they must be designed to be proportional to the harm that communities or recipients of the funds experience because of the COVID pandemic, and they must be designed to benefit impacted individuals or groups. So, you know, that's something that we should look carefully at and work closely with our community on, really figuring out deeply who's been impacted by this pandemic economically and how those funds can go to the best recovery uses for them. So to me, that looks like a very community engaged process, not just staff bringing something to the select board, but a more wholesome, inclusive process.
Great. And I would just remind you that the select board meetings are a public process. Okay. So anyone else want to comment on this action? Ann?
2 points. First, I'm very grateful that these funds are able to cover the one large economic damage that the town suffered from the COVID pandemic. And the other point I wanted to make, I guess I'm actually I'm just curious. I don't know where the language was that you just read from for that. It's somewhere in the guidance for, I'm curious if the $10 million one-time allowance for municipalities in Vermont for just general use essentially oversteps that guidance.
My reading of the guidance, there continues to be a wide variety of, so the easiest thing is that you can use it for the general provision of government up until the
10 million.
Up until either the 10 million or if you wish to establish exactly how much you lost, there's a process by which you could do that. Obviously, we wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
So the reporting and the usage gets a little more complicated depending upon how you choose to use it. If we were, for example, to facilitate the building of housing, there might be one of the things I'd like to talk about with our accountant is, would we be able to fund that as a general provision of government, given the fact that we, in fact, fund projects like that routinely? That might make it a little easier in terms of reporting, but there continues to be elements in the guidance that indicate, just as Jessica pointed out, if you're going to be providing a program, for example, to respond to the economic harm, right? It should be directed towards those who felt the harm, and especially towards those who felt the harm most.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess I'm just, and I don't disagree with that. I guess what I'm just not understanding is why would we not just allocate all the funds under general usage so that it's not constricted at all, so that we can do whatever we want with it? keeping in mind that
that
we
is
would
what we're
maybe
gonna do.
want to do what those things are, but are they actually held within those guidelines if we're just general?
I am interested and continue to pursue further guidance on monitoring and reporting.
Yeah.
My recommendation based on my reading of the guidance, based on conversations I've had with Katie Buckley, who the Vermont League of Cities and Towns has hired to be the sort of person with whom you can ask questions about municipal ARPA. Our discussions have led us to believe at this time that take the 10 million, use it for the general provisions of government. And that doesn't necessarily mean, you're funding staff salaries with it. You could choose to do all manner of different things, but in terms of reporting to the US Treasury, we used it for the general provision of government services.
Yeah, I see.
Right.
You'd like to add on that, Yoshi?
Well, I think I was about to respond. Exactly what you're saying is that it's a nuance, right? It's about being able to say that we're under a general provision, right? And then, however, it doesn't mean that we cannot, with the intent to accomplish what you're saying. I think is what we can, it's the easiest for us to be able to do that reporting, correct? Because otherwise it's a very difficult, not difficult, but it's a different type of process for us to be able to say, well, here's for this, here's for this, here's for this.
Yeah.
And that's why the league has suggested to every town, go this route. It's the easiest for you, and ultimately determining how you want to spend the money.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. That really clears it up.
Tim, did you have something?
Well, I just had an add-on question because of something that Patrick said. I was just curious because there was language about government tasks or government, I forget what the, so does that apply even if it's in an area that is not traditionally a service that we would have provided? Do you understand my nuance there? Like,
I believe I do. I think if we can reasonably consider it to be government service, the answer would be yes. If we've got a specific idea, we could always, run it up the flagpole and get some feedback on it. But there are very few things now for which US Treasury has said you cannot use ARPA funding for. And they're very specific and they're very limited. You cannot pay debt. You cannot settle lawsuits with it, and you cannot replenish pension funds. But these are very limited.
Okay, so maybe the select board members would like to have this documentation in their package so that we can begin to study as you all are studying, and I think that would be helpful to us. Jessica, did you have another?
Oh, yeah, just a quick technical question about how, if we accept the 10 million as
I wish it was 10
It's
million.
not 10 million.
We don't have
that's under that.
2.8.
Way we
spend
can
this.
accept it. If we can accept it that way, for general government services, will the town still be able to leverage it for matches and additional funding for specific projects? And
Absolutely.
wonderful.
It just becomes money,
It just becomes
right?
money.
Well, except for it still holds those restrictions that were
Right.
It's just, but they're much more limited.
much more limited. Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to do this about the parking fund?
Do what I.
Any public?
Tim, would you like to make the motion?
Do we have a
If
comment?
anybody was asking questions.
Nobody, not at this time.
That's what you're saying.
Oh, yes, public input, public comment, whatever.
Okay.
The long one, Tim.
Oh, I can do it.
Great. I believe
My
in you.
turn.
You got it.
I will make, three motions, right?
That is
No.
It's just one.
One long motion.
Okay, I was trying to divide it. I'll make a motion to accept the one-time standard allowance of up to 10 million that would be dollars, for the purpose of calculating lost revenue as provided by the U.S. Department of Treasury for the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, and to use $555,225 in SLFRF for the provision of governmental services, and to replenish lost revenue in the parking fund, and to use $90,000 in SLFRF for the provision of governmental services and to replenish lost revenue in the general fund.
Thank you, Tim. Tim has moved to accept the one-time standard allowance of up to $10 million for the purpose of calculating lost revenue as provided by the U.S. Department of Treasury for the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, and to use $555,225 in LSFRF for the provision of governmental services and to replenish lost revenue in the parking fund, and to use $90,000 in SLFRF for the provision of governmental services and to replenish lost revenue in the general fund. All select board members in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much.
Pronounced slough rough.
Pardon me?
Slough rough.
SLFRF.
Yes.
Yikes.
Get used to it.
I was listening to Tim going, oh, this is bad. And then I realized I had to say it. All right, are we at H? Are we ready
Yes, we
to
are.
assign motions?
Oh, boy. I recall how we did this last
Yeah,
time.
me
Just like
too.
eeny meeny, right?
Chair, vice chair, clerk, board member, add, keep it going.
Okay.
Tim
Well,
seems
if this,
questioning.
if this what our clerk has recalled, I think we should.
I
go
wasn't the
with it.
clerk last time we did it, though.
All right. All right, I'll take number one.
Like this way.
Yeah, that's true.
First of all, does anyone have any comments or questions about the wording of any motion before we assign them? We're on H. Very good. All right. I'll take number one.
Are we doing this at like the number game where?
Yeah.
Okay, I will do 2.
Daniel will do preliminary motion number 3.
I'll do 4.
No. Article 1.
What?
You got the preliminary motion.
Oh.
I was doing the same thing.
Me too. Okay, so where are we at? Article 1, that's what I'll do?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
You were waiting for us all to walk into that.
Okay, so it's back to me on 3.
Oh, man, now I'm all screwed up. Okay, so I'm 4.
Daniel for Article 5.
That's for 6.
7. I love this one.
7 is Tim. That means I'm 8.
I'm 9.
10.
11. Oh, it's a nice little one.
Tim is 12.
Tim is 12. I get the lucky 13.
Nice. I'm 14.
I will do number 15. Ooh.
I will do Article 17 because I don't have to do 8.
Oh, Liz.
Yeah.
There you go. You got it. Well done.
Enjoy.
I got the short straw.
Yeah, there it is.
Or you could call it the long straw.
Yeah, there you go.
19.
I will do 20.
21.
Tim has 22.
I have 23.
Wait,
Oh, I'm
wait.
sorry.
Okay,
Liz is 23.
has
I'm 23, you're
Okay.
24.
Got 25.
Ooh, 26.
All right, done.
We
If
did
only
it.
town meeting was that simple.
As I recall, we get provided these again.
Yes, yes.
We won't have to take perfect notes.
All right, the next item is committee vacancies. And I think our clerk should
Thanks, Liz.
anytime.
There are a number of committee vacancies currently. I shall read them. Agricultural Advisory Board, number of vacancies, 3. ADA Committee, 5 vacancies. Arts Committee, 4 vacancies. Cemetery Committee, 1 vacancy. Citizens Police Communications Committee, CPCC, 1 vacancy. Development Review Board alternate, 3 vacancies. Fence viewers with terms ending June 2022, 3 vacancies. Hazard Mitigation Committee, 1 vacancy. Inspector of Lumber, Shingles and Wood, 1 vacancy. And if somebody wishes to apply to be on one of these committees, they could go on the town website or they could contact the town manager's office.
That is correct. Thank you very much, Daniel.
You're welcome.
All right. We are entertaining a motion to move again into executive session to discuss the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options and the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee where the board has determined that premature general knowledge would clearly place the select board or people involved at a substantial disadvantage. Invited into the executive session at various times are the town manager, the assistant town manager, and the town attorney. All select board members in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, 5-0. The motion is carried. I make a note that we will reconvene the public meeting and take no action during executive session. And the purpose of our reconvening is solely for the purpose of adjournment. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. We have reconvened. No action has been taken in executive session, and we are reconvening for the sole purpose of adjourning. Would anyone like to make such a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Tim has moved to adjourn. All select board members in favor of adjournment, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
There we are, 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, fine.
Bye, everybody.